right, we're now live, Jesse. So on today's podcast, we got Jesse Hynes, which is what would you consider yourself, a founder or a CEO? Because I know some people like to have different names.
Yeah, I don't really care, right? I guess founder. It's hard to be a CEO when you don't have many employees, so we'll go with founder.
Go a founder. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So like Seedstarter, man, can you just give I want to go straight off the bat. So can you just give a brief description of what Seedstarter is?
Yeah. So the quick pitch of Seedstarter is it is a what's legally called a funding portal, and it's really just equity crowdfunding. And what that means is it's a place where businesses that haven't gone public yet, who haven't IPO'd yet, that want to raise funds but don't want to do it through the traditional VC method, or want to do it with VCs but also open it up to regular non-accredited investors, your standard individual who is unfortunately blocked out from the system. Seedstarter is a place where you can fundraise, you can raise capital, and allow those regular people in early entrance into your company before you IPO.
Yeah, I can see your cat in the background just cruising around.
Oh, that's Eevee. If you're a Pokemon fan, she's named after Eevee the Pokemon.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
So with Seedstarter, has this been it would at least be an idea that you've had for probably a fair while, working with so many different crypto companies, you'd see a lot of things and be like, well, why don't we just do it this way? That's what I'm guessing that you've come up with anyway. So has this been an idea for a long time?
Yeah, it's been something kind of brewing in my mind for a while, and one of the biggest reasons that I really wanted to pursue it did have to do with the crypto and blockchain space. I mean, I've held a pretty unpopular opinion for a long time that a lot of tokens and a lot of NFTs were not that they're securities, it's that they were offered as unregistered securities based on the way they were sold. And the reason that happened is because one of the greatest things about blockchain is it allows founders, CEOs, whatever, to connect with regular people and let them invest in their company and get involved in the ground floor like they've never been able to do before. But unfortunately, the way that it's being done is not in alliance with U.S. laws. Talking about whether U.S. laws are good or not, the way that they are, or whether the SEC is good is a whole nother topic. But they're not in congruence with how they are right now. So I wanted to create a way that specifically crypto companies, but really any other company, can come around, raise funds from the unaccredited, the non-millionaires compliantly, and then issue their tokens, issue their NFTs, whatever it is, not reliant on that fundraising. So you don't have to sell these things for a lot of money or sell a token for a lot of money. You can actually sell some kind of ownership interest in your company or some security in your company and raise those funds and then issue those things at a later date when you're actually ready and they have utility.
Yeah. So going back to the basic fundamentals of crypto, man, and correct me if I'm wrong, because the way that I sort of envision how it works, if you've got a token, a token's essentially a part ownership in the company, really. So you're essentially buying shares in the company that they're going to go well. And then a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ethereum is actually just a currency. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's the goal, right? But what's happened with a lot of companies is it's really blurred the line because people feel like they're buying tokens or NFTs or whatever else there is out there. And that is reliant on the company becoming big and huge. So it feels like you're buying a percentage or a part of the company in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, when you're talking about a Seedstarter offer that might have a token, the goal is that, yeah, it's kind of like tokenized stock, or it could be other rights that are tokenized, things like royalty interest, so a percentage of revenue, or something that, it could be a million different types of security. It could even be like some kind of debt instrument where if you hold this, you almost have a loan against the company and the company has to owe you money with interest, kind of a thing. But yeah.
So when you have someone reach out to you and they say, I've got this small project, this is essentially what we want to do. How long does it generally take for you to vet projects, and what's your vetting process?
Yeah. So in terms of, whether it depends on, what they're going to do right away. So some companies want to come in and they want to do what's called a testing the waters offering, and that's beneficial for myself and them, because it's not really a formal offering. It's not a solicitation of investment, but it's saying, hey, look at me. This is what I want to offer. Are you interested? In that kind of vetting process, I don't really need to go that deep into it. I can do, something no more than like a Google search, and then check into the founders. Now, if a company is going to go live and they actually want to offer a security, we have to do some kind of background checks into everybody who has, a percentage of ownership in the company. And, it starts with those background checks where it looks at things like criminal history. And most specifically, it looks at whether they have violated securities laws in the past. And also whether they are located in, or they are someone who's on what's called the OFAC sanctioned list. So
Hmm.
essentially, like, who the world has decided are bad actors. And that's the limitation of what we do, and those can come back in essentially like a week. I can get those results. And then I also like to do a little extra due diligence myself, and ironically, some of the best due diligence does come from literal Google searches, right? You can find out more from Google than you can sometimes in background checks. So I'll do some extra things. So I'll say, like, from beginning to end, in terms of vetting someone, 2 weeks is essentially how long it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So if someone essentially does the test in the waters phase for a seed starter and they don't pass the initial test in the waters, like how many times have you put in that they can like come back, reevaluate what they want to do and probably make it a little bit more, what would you say, like a little bit more to cater the individual buying the token? So do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah. So for the test in the waters phase, I mean, there's they set their own limits, and that's the same thing with if somebody goes live. They set what they want to raise, so they can make that $50. It doesn't make sense to go forward with $50 because how are you going to run a business on that? But they can, or they can set it at like $1 million, or anywhere up to $5 million. So for the test in the waters, we've had, I think, maybe 7 go live, and I think 4 of them have been very successful, and 3 of them just unfortunately at this point haven't been. And some have asked me to extend, some are going to come back, and I have absolutely no problem with that, and they can come back as many times as they want, to see if things have changed, if my market has increased, or their viewers, the people who are interested in their product, has increased. In terms of, like, if someone goes live and they're unsuccessful, I think I haven't really made that determination yet, because we haven't, it's one of those things where I'm thinking, let's see where we're at when we face that bridge. But I probably would say, welcome to come back again. But if it fails twice, then it's highly likely that it's not that the company is a failure. It's just that the company and my platform, the audience just isn't there. So it would be a thing where you'd wait until maybe years down the line where the audience grows.
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm trying to think of like if I was going to vet people, man, and like I've been in crypto for a while now, and there's been a lot of bad actors as far as that have changed their name and even
Yeah.
changed their appearance, the whole lot. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's still the wild wild west, man. I don't envy you in that respect, but people on X and other platforms, like they're pretty clued in, man. Like you got face recognition software now, like as people just deep, like go deep, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in crypto. They love it.
Yeah, the good news is, I mean, these background, I use companies that do these background checks, and they're pretty, they're pretty diligent, and they really find essentially everything. I can't go into details, but I had, a founder who, like, I found something on them and they weren't even aware of it, and it turned out to be a big nothing. It was like they were tied to something, and it was like they got something from someone, and that individual was in trouble, and they were just like tangentially related to someone who created trouble, but it wasn't even then. But even that popped up on our background checks.
Yeah, well, that's pretty thorough then.
Yeah.
So, like in Australia, man, like you have to be able to do background checks on people and all the rest of the stuff. So, are you saying that you use like a third party for that sort of stuff, or is that something that you can look into yourself for like police checks and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're a regulated and a registered entity with the SEC and FINRA, so it's in our best interests to use third parties, because if we miss something and we missed something ourselves,
You got liability.
yeah, there's a lot of liability there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how many projects are currently on the test in the water phase?
Yeah, I think we've had, and I might be wrong, but I think it's been about 7 have gone live with the testing the water phase. And I think right now in the first quarter, we're probably looking at pushing 5 to actual live. We haven't pushed anyone live yet, and there's some reasons behind that. But I think first Q1, our goal is 5 projects. I don't want to go too crazy with too many. I think it's good to just be able to focus on a couple and then build some success off of that.
Yeah. So with the projects that are in there, like, do you work similar to an exchange as far as like to build capital through percentage of tokens, like if they go live on the platform?
In terms of like how are you asking, like how Seedstarter makes money?
Yeah, like essentially, like if they want to come on the platform, do you get like X percentage of the token that's going to be distributed?
Got it. Yeah. So the way it works is there's no cost to come onto the platform, but there's no cost if you have an unsuccessful raise. So if you set your limit at like 250,000 raise and you don't get it, and everybody just walks away, everyone gets their money back. My company doesn't get anything. But if there are successful raises, it's a 2-part thing. It's a percentage of the raise in cash and a percentage in the raise in kind in security. So if someone offers like a safe interest, we'll get like 1% of that safe, and we'll get a percentage of the cash that's raised.
Yeah, that's cool. I know that they used to, like, once again, man, like my experience in crypto, like in Australia, there's a company called CoinSpot, and I'm not too sure how they do stuff, but I have a suspicion that, if you have enough capital, you can essentially be like, look, I'll give you X amount of tokens. This is what we want to do. And then they just speculate and list it. But yeah, once again, I'm just speculating. So that's not fact.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of that stuff isn't, particularly legal. We're actually very limited in what we can accept as payment, and we have to report it. And so the great thing is that every offering that goes live, you will see on that offering what our percentage is and what we will ultimately take if the offering is successful.
Yeah. So being that you've been in crypto for so long, man, like what do you think about all the exchanges and all the rest of it, like these big leaders that we've had in the space for a long time, like CZ and, that Sam Altman, isn't it? I can't, because I never got into his project at all. So it's but there's a lot of news around him all the time now, essentially having a lot of the stuff that he had against him pretty much dropped through court. So I find it interesting.
Yeah. And that's I think you're going to find that across all of crypto, because, I'm not saying that people entered crypto with bad intentions, but there was a lot of money to be made in crypto. And unfortunately, sometimes, you go in with good intentions. You're like, I want to create something. And then you see $1 billion, right? And that kind of changes everything for some people. You're then like, oh, well, what can I do next? Can I get that jet? Can I get that yacht? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it kind of like, money, in a sense, it does actually corrupt people. But I think that a lot of companies, they took kind of like the Uber approach, where it was like, we're not sure if this is legal, so we're going to truck along and we're going to keep doing it. And some just pushed it further and further and further into, like, they were probably being advised that it was illegal, which is kind of what Uber did, if you think about it. But I think we're at the point where these people are getting cracked down on. And so they're getting replaced internally, or their companies are failing, either or. And at that situation, we're going to start, leveling out to, people. We've done kind of a lot of the pioneering, and there's still more to come. But, in terms of legality, I think we're going to start to go towards the flat line of people being more compliant and less, crazy, right? Yeah.
It's sort of funny, like how when it all first started, it was like, not your keys, not your wallet. And then over time, we've sort of like wanted to leave the banking system, and then we turned exchanges into banks. And it's just like, fuck, like what's the difference between fiat and using, an exchange at this point? Like even through CoinSpot, man, like they're connected up to the ATO, which is the Australian Tax Department. And so everything I sell, everything I do goes directly to them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
like
it's all tax reported. Yeah.
Like I'm guessing they have to do that to be regulated, but like at the same time, the lines have been crossed, man. It's not what it was.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
and that's like the bare minimum is reporting to tax entities, because what ended up happening, they weren't reporting. Most of these companies, most of these exchanges weren't reporting anything, and then they basically got contacted by the IRS, by other agencies, and global agencies as well, depending on what country you're in. And it's basically like, start doing this or you're getting shut down. This is the bare minimum of what you need to do. So yeah, we definitely have gone far. But then again, if you think about it, a lot of money's been made, and if it wasn't for things like exchanges, probably wouldn't have been made, because like the regular person, they don't know how to get into this. They don't understand, until someone like really solves the wallet issue of self custody. Um, you know, how is the regular person going to get involved? How you onboard all these millions of people into crypto? So it's been a bad thing. But also it's been a really great thing.
Yeah, well, we did have options like Ledger and stuff, but then there's also been issues in that space as well for the hardware wallets.
Yeah, but then how do you buy too? Like these days, I don't even know. I'm worried about connecting my wallet to anything. There's so many scams out there, and they're so good. They're so clever. But
Yeah, well, like even my computer, man, my wife would be like, "Oh, what's your password again?" And I'll say, "Well, what are you using it for?"
yeah,
Because if you're not to click links, don't click nothing, because at the end of the day, man, that's your vulnerability point. So,
yeah,
so
yeah. I
like
mean, yeah.
sorry, man, like a company like yours, man, like don't get into the specifics, but like, how do you secure something that's raising that much capital, like just in general, like even as you scale and get bigger, like do you have to bring in a third party like security firm, or like what's generally the way to secure your funds?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, there's the right now, and then there's the future goal. So right now, unfortunately, even when people are offering, digital assets as securities and things like that, we can still only today accept fiat currencies as payments. So the way that it works is we have a bank that serves as an escrow. So if you make an investment, all money goes into that escrow bank, and it stays there. And then ultimately, if the raise is successful, it gets released to the company. If not, that bank ultimately, issues it back to the individuals. So, we're not kind of middlemanning anything. There's no like custody of digital currencies anywhere that's happening in any moment. It's just custody of fiat currencies that are sitting with the bank entity. The future is, how can we use crypto and digital assets as a payment? And what's really complicated with that is, because of the nature of how our offerings work, companies set their minimum. Let's say it's 100,000. I think I've used that a couple times. If they don't meet that, let's say their offerings live for a month. If they don't meet that, the money gets returned. The issue is, what happens when you pay in Bitcoin, and when you paid it was worth 50,000, and then when it's returned, it's worth 15, or it's worth 100, or the company gets 100 or 50. How do you credit that kind of a situation? What goes on there? Does the user get mad that they feel like they lost $35,000 in that exchange, kind of a thing? Or do they feel like, oh, when they invested, it was worth 50, but the company got it, it was worth 100. Do they get 100,000 of investment or 50? So it's this big nightmare. So the solution for that is, sliding someone in front of the payment provider, that basically, when you purchase like whatever Bitcoin or Ethereum with it, it auto converts to USD, and that USD goes into the custody solution. But finding the right company to do that, like does it compliantly, I've struggled. I found one company that I thought was going to be good, but I still haven't found anybody really slide into that role.
Yeah. So I've got a personal question for you, man. I know that you've been in the XRP community for a while,
Yeah.
and you know, like I know for me the whole reason I got into crypto was more like a few to traditional systems,
Mm-hmm.
where XRP, it's almost a different breed of people, because they want the regulation, they want to be a part of the banking system and all the rest of it. Like, is that like, what do you like about XRP? Is that one of the factors in it?
Well, actually think it's interesting, because like most XRP people are like, fuck the government, fuck banks, but also I want to be right in the middle there. I find it really funny. Uh, no, I think the biggest reason that and that was the first crypto that I bought, and the first cryptocurrency that I really fell in love with. The biggest reason was, I saw the problem of cross-border payments. You know, And it's a pretty large problem. And there's a lot of money, tied up in these Nostro Vostro accounts around the world, sitting there. And it takes time to clear. There's not kind of instant settlement solutions. So I just saw the problem, and I realized, how much, a solution was needed. Well, it's not needed, but it definitely solves a lot of things. There's a problem that needs solving. And that XRP, there was a company that was driving towards solving it. I don't agree with everything they've done. But, the Ripple company did have a lot of connections. They were working with a lot of good entities, a lot of banks and things like that. So they were just pushing in the right direction. And that was it, just as simple as a really big problem that I saw. And I liked the solution.
Yeah. So you actually use a part of the XRP technology in Seedstarter, is that correct?
That is the goal. So the Seedstarter has a token. We did a test in the waters for it. It was really, really successful. And the goal is, which is really ironic, it's to, if we pursue this offering in the future, and the reason I say that is there are legal obligations as to, until it's live, or if it's ever live, I can't say that we're going to use it. We're going to do it. So if we ever pursue this offering of Seedstarter token, the goal is that token will be an intentionally issued security on the XRP ledger, which is just hilarious to me because, not hilarious, but the SEC has claimed that, XRP is a security itself. And here I am issuing a security on the XRP ledger. But yeah, so that's the goal.
Yeah. So, like, what's the hub now, do you think, for cryptocurrency? Like, I know for a while it was Malta. Is it still that, or is it more Dubai and other places like that?
Yeah, it keeps changing, right? The most recent movement I've seen is a lot of Swiss and Dubai related things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't heard that much about Malta lately, to be quite honest.
Because
I
I've seen
visited
a lot
Malta.
of, yeah. Did you like it, man?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's hot though. That's how it's like for you every day, but it was hot for me.
Was it hot as in humidity hot, or is it
Yeah.
like, yeah?
And the sun was just burning, like you can see like how pale I am. I burn real quickly, like I had to basically like cover myself and because I would just be red. I burn like an Irishman.
Well, that's funny, man. It's my wife's Maltese, so
Oh,
like
okay.
we've never actually been there at all, but her family said it's really lovely there, so I want to
Yeah,
go there one day.
we got a tour of Malta, and it was really kind of funny because the guy leading the tour was from Australia, but his family was originally from Malta, and he moved back to Malta, and he's like a knight of Malta, and I didn't even know that existed. But it was like really interesting getting a tour of Malta led by a guy with an Australian accent whose like family is deep from Malta, Yeah.
Yeah, we get around a fair bit.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of these companies, man? That like, they think they can find like a scapegoat and start their company in places like Malta and Dubai and all the rest of it, thinking they can avoid the laws of America and other countries.
I feel like that's my most common tweet is calling out companies like that. It's fine if you want to operate in just that jurisdiction, but the second that you decide that you want to have U.S. customers, and that's the issue, and yeah, is U.S. law doesn't apply everywhere, but it does apply when you are a company somewhere offering to U.S. customers. So if you make the decision to have U.S. customers, then that hub isn't going to protect you.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's just that simple.
So going back to Seedstarter, man, like I just want to get a sort of an idea of how you are as like essentially a founder or a business owner, and like being that you have a past history in law, like how do you go firing people and stuff like that? Is that something that you find difficult to do, or if there's merit for it, you find it easy?
How do I what people?
Fire people.
Oh,
So
fire people.
yeah. So have you had to do that in the positions that you've held as a lawyer, or like I'm guessing that you would have to, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I've never fired anyone. And I'm gonna pretend it's because I only hire good people, but it's probably not it's probably not the reason. But I've never found myself in a situation where I've had to fire someone. And I think it's a couple, a couple reasons. Is, I do like to believe that I'm good at vetting people and I'm good at just like getting a sense when I talk to people. of who's going to be good at their job, or at the very least, who is going to be dedicated enough to learn. Um, uh, you don't have to be the most qualified from day one if you're willing to learn. I mean, I worked for a company where it was easily arguable that I was not qualified, in terms of like job history to become a CLO, but I did it, right? And that's because I was dedicated and because I worked every single day, and I worked, way too many hours, and my wife did not love that. But in terms of firing people, I also have never overhired. So like when you're part of early startups, what often happens is your growth is like this, and it shoots up. And then when you get near up there, people start to just hire as many people as possible. And I was
Mhm.
always have always been very slow and steady in terms of my hiring, so that I can individually work with everybody, and that might not be the most scalable thing, but I've been able to successfully do it. So haven't had to fire anyone yet. So I'll let you know when I do.
Well, that's good, man. Like I remember when I first had to fire someone, it was definitely very awkward.
Yeah.
And the person that I was firing tried to essentially latch on to the job in
Mhm.
any way that they could, which made it hard because it gets to the point where it's just like, look, I'm sorry, but no, you got to
Yeah.
go. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting, man, when you cross that road, because you
Yeah.
seem like a pretty nice guy, but I could imagine that if it was all stacked in the right direction, you'd end up doing what you have to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a lawyer, right? So like I think the like the closest like comparison you can think about is, when I used to go to court and when I used to deal with other lawyers. I'm very, very nice to them until the second that they, everyone knows what lawyers are like, right? And some lawyers are just real, rude individuals. And when I get that, you should see me. You wouldn't think that I'm nice at all. When someone sets me off, I I become like this, like I go from like Chihuahua to pit bull, immediately. I don't think I would ever do that while firing somebody, but when it comes to business, when sometimes decisions just have to be made. I like to hope that honesty and truthfulness will be enough, but for some people it really isn't, and they just like you said, they'll try to latch on, and I'm not gonna let someone take advantage of me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So what did you want to be as a kid, man? Because I'm guessing it wasn't a lawyer.
It was a lawyer.
It
Um,
was.
and I'll tell you why. I don't even have a good reason. Well, it's a good reason, but it's I when I was a kid, and it's this one like trait of mine has continued my entire life. I loved to argue. And I loved not just to argue, but to take the other side from people, even if I didn't believe in it. So people would like take a point of view, and it would be the obvious right point of view, and everyone would agree. So I'd be like, no, I got to take the other side, and I would sit there and just argue with people. So as you can imagine, when I was a little kid, I didn't have that many friends, um, because of that. But and from that, when people were like, "What do you want to be?" I was like, "Well, I think I want to be a lawyer because this feels right." And then I played some like video games like Phoenix, right? I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it was like uh, a Game Boy game where you get to be a lawyer, and it's like objection, and so I just like was like, this is perfect for me. This is what I like to do. I watch a lot of lawyer shows, and I thought it was always just like going to be this dramatic court moment. Didn't turn out to be like that, but yeah, it was just for whatever odd reason, that's what I always wanted to be.
Yeah. So like with the type of law that you done, like was that usually with a jury and stuff, or?
Not often. So I started out as an elder lawyer. So I did wills, estate planning. So that was more like transactional. I would only go to court when I would deal with either estate administration, estate litigation. So like family members were fighting over money, fighting over mom money, which was that's the worst. Money arguing is the worst. Like, I had a case where people were all fine with the distribution of cash, but where they were fighting was the distribution of like clay pottery that their mom made. So like the cash they distributed, but they wanted that they like racked up like hundreds of thousands of legal fees over like pottery that was created on a wheel by their mother. I'm just like, what are you doing here? I'm not representing you. I'm not. Yeah. And I told them a million times, I'm like, look, if you want to pay me to do this, I'll do this, but this is wrong, and I, but they were going to hire someone else anyway and pursue it. But yeah, so litigation wasn't really the biggest part, but it was just when I was doing estate administration or guardianship. So it was like where an individual can't make their own decisions anymore, and you need to appoint someone to make decisions for them. But then I moved on to, cryptocurrency and other areas of business law, and then I moved away from litigation entirely.
Yeah. I find it interesting that you actually originally wanted to be a lawyer, because I reckon that's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah. I don't know why, but everyone always said it from day one. They're like, he's going to be a lawyer. And I don't know, maybe it was like a manifestation of what everyone was telling me is what really happened.
Yeah. So how do you go being married, man, and being a lawyer that likes to argue?
Yeah.
I gotta ask, man.
I know when I've lost, and that's basically every argument with my wife. So I save the argument for at home. I say I don't argue over things like that unless where it's clear that I'm like playing around, and then like we have like a little joke session with that, or like every now and then if I drink a little much, then that's when the argumentative side gets out. But then my wife knows to leave me alone, and that's it.
Do you ever watch that movie, man? I can't remember what it was called. It was like two spies that had the Brad Pitt and the Angelina Jolie.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I think is what it was called.
Yeah, yeah. Like I reckon they'd make a good movie, man, if they had like two married lawyers.
Yeah, if you want to watch people argue the whole time, oh, I can't imagine.
So, like as far as the law stuff, man, like obviously you're essentially sort of like you'd still need your lawyer's background, but it wouldn't be completely essential for Seedstarter, would it?
No. I mean, it is a legal related entity, right? But it's not. I'm not practicing law, but I'm obviously going to keep my license. It's not that complicated to keep it. I just have to do a certain amount of classes each year. But it's also good because I'm not just doing that. I'm helping some companies by serving in advisory roles, and while I'm not providing legal services in those roles, I am in a sense like not giving legal advice, but pointing out where legal points of issue are. So keeping honest with that, and one day I might decide to go back inside with a business on the legal front, even, especially with Seedstarter running, I don't see myself as a long-term, I don't want to say it like that, as a long-term CEO, because I love running the company and I think that's what I want to do. But like, what I really love to do is I like to find people who are smarter than me and then put them in positions where I can then kind of back away, where I'm still there and I'm still like overseeing things, but I'm not running it. So, I could see myself finding myself having more time one day, and I don't do well with doing nothing. So, doing legal with other companies and things like that.
Yeah. So as far as that vision, man, like where do you see Seedstarter in the next 5 years if everything runs smoothly?
Yeah, I mean, the hope is first and foremost, just being successful in the United States is, getting it to the point where 5 years, I'd say, if I can have 100 companies go live on the platform a year, that's really the hope in terms of US based. But where I really want to go is I want to kind of go global with it. I want to bring Seedstarter first to Europe, and that's like a 3-year plan, I think. And then start to do country by country, because you have to, in Europe, you can be compliant in one country and then be able to operate across it. But in other countries, you have to go country by country and make sure you're following their rules. So that's part one, is starting to globally move. Part two is I want Seedstarter or a sub entity of Seedstarter to become a broker dealer, which would then create this opportunity for every security that's offered on the platform. I want to have a place where it can legally trade. And so if we get a broker dealer license, we can create that sub platform where that's kind of like an exchange for registered securities that happen on the platform. So, the goal is obviously tremendous growth in terms of companies going live. But realistically speaking, my goals aren't about the numbers of companies that go live. It's about, expanding the business to the point where I can then seek Europe and I can, seek a broker dealer license. And that only happens right if there's, hundreds of companies that go live on the platform.
Yeah. So we've got Osprey 787. Happy New Year's, guys, and then Punjab said hello. So how you going, guys?
But, those are some people that I've known through Gala, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's like mostly my audience as well.
Yeah.
Like when I originally started, man, I started off as Gala the Kid. and
That's right. Yeah.
I decided I didn't want to be pigeonholed.
Yeah.
And then also when I was streaming, man, like a lot of people were like, well, you're not a kid, you're like, you know. So I decided to get rid of that name. But
Yeah.
you've been pretty consistent, man. Like you haven't really had a pseudonym or anything like that, have you?
You know, I did once. I I had Twitter before I created my Twitter. So if like you look at my Twitter, I think it said that I joined in like 2020 or I don't know what year, but I had a Twitter for a couple of years before that. I think it was like Digital Asset Esquire or something like that. And it had like not my face. I even had a podcast back then. You know, and I just didn't stick with it, but also I didn't want to be anonymous anymore. So I don't even know why. I guess I didn't really understand how Twitter worked. Instead of just like changing my handle and keeping like, I think at that point I had like 10,000 followers. I just started over and I created a new account and then I, you know, started from scratch. But yeah, I did once have a pseudonym and like a weird image attached to it.
Yeah. So how do you go getting flack on like on X-Men? Because like you're I read the comments to a lot of your posts and it gets pretty brutal in there. It's just like I don't like. I always think to myself, I wonder how Jesse's like reading that. You know what I mean? Like, is he fucking fuming mad, or is he just having a laugh and thinking it's funny?
I think I took it personally for a little bit, you know, because it was hard for me because I grew my audience, you know, pretty quick and people really loved me back in the day, you know, back before Ripple got sued by the SEC. You know, I was probably the first lawyer covering XRP and talking about it, or at least like really covering it. And then the lawsuit came, and my opinion wasn't always like you know, pixies and fairy dust. You know, like Ripple's wonderful and I love them, blah 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 blah. You know, and I joke around sometimes with Jeremy, and you know, John and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name, Jim. You know, it's funny because Jim I'm really close with, and I, you know, I tell them that their coming to the XRP community has like made everybody hate me because, you know, they're more positive than me, and it doesn't mean I'm right or they're wrong or they're right and I'm wrong. But anyway, you know, so them joining is, you know, that they came with a more positive outlook of the case, and I came with kind of a more negative outlook of the case. But for a while, I think I took it personally, and I actually stopped tweeting for a while. But nowadays, I kind of just like, I have fun with it. You know, when people talk, you know, trash to me, I talk trash back sometimes. um, sometimes I'll block people depending on what they're saying, and you know, now it's the mixture is I get some, unfortunately I get some Gala hate from some people in the Gala community, which is just, I don't love that, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, well, like being that I've been a part of the Gala community for a fair while now, like the mentality has changed. But I found the same thing with XRP, man, because like, you know, when you look at the fundamentals of XRP, like there's a lot of really good stuff there, you know, and they have a lot of good ideas, what they want to pursue and all the rest of it. But the main thing that turns me off is actually the community itself, because if you ask anything at all, you just get shut down. I remember I used to argue all the time, man. This dude, his name was Hamato, and
Matt.
yeah, he'd always be like, oh, you sound confused. And then he'd like write out like a big post, and then I'd go back at him, and then he'd be like, oh, you're still confused. And like, I don't know why, man, but the whole saying that I was confused just used to really trigger me. So I'd be up at like 5 a.m. just writing to this dude for like hours on end, getting angry about it. And
That's funny. He's, you know, he's actually a really good guy too. But I get it, you know, it's funny because, you know, when you work with developers, right? People who are traditionally just like developers, they think differently. And so like, even, you know, one of my best friends that I worked with, you know, people know him, his name is Doc. I think we get into arguments all the time. And that's just because like we talk in such different ways. And, you know, it's just like, you know, he's so like matter of fact in one way, and I'm so like matter of fact in like a legal way. And we get into so many fights because of it. And neither of us means bad, but you know, it's just lost in translation of like how we think and how we are.
yeah, well, like the reason I was bringing up the XRP stuff, man, is because, you know, I see Gala turning into something like that. Like I like to look at things and go, oh yeah, you know, like Gala's doing it right here, and then they're not doing it so right here. And that's the
Yeah.
way I look at all projects. And I'm not going to give praise just because I've invested tokens, like
Yeah.
invested fiat in tokens. So, yeah, like it's just weird how things have turned out once the market's been saturated with so many tokens and communities, because it's built this weird rivalry and like almost religious aspect. But
Yeah. I'll tell you though, the one thing that the XRP community has that Galar community never got was riddlers, you know, because the XRP community was full of it, like Bearable Guy and others. There was a point in time, and I was never going to do it, but I like seriously considered in my mind when I was working there, I was like, should I become a riddler and start leaking stuff? But I was obviously that's in violation of attorney-client privilege, and I didn't do it. But I was like, this community needs a riddler, but it would have been really funny, but no, I never did it. But I have been waiting for somebody to pretend to be a Riddler for the Gala community, but it never happened.
yeah, I don't think I've come across any like riddlers or something like that. So,
even in the XRP community, did you never see that stuff?
though I sort of like jumped in and out because
Okay.
like I'd get excited about something they were talking about, and then I'd try to pick it a little bit.
Yeah.
And because I'm not very well versed in like XRP or like you can't know everything about every project, man. There's too much.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was just, there was this guy, his name was, I don't know this guy, there was this person, their name was Bearable Guy 123, so I guess it's fair for me to assume they're a guy, and it started with just like these images of things, and then like things tangentially related came true, so people were like, oh, this is an insider, and they're leaking stuff, and then it just got like progressively like more riddly and stuff, and then these other people came along and started making these videos. They're like called Ripple Riddler and all these other different things. And they're YouTubers who spent hours and hours and hours decoding these riddles. This was like the biggest part of the XRP community. I used to go crazy. I was like, this is nonsense. But it was also so entertaining. I used to love just try to watch people try to decode those riddles.
So being someone that's been in the community for a while, and you've gone to, like, I'm assuming a lot of events and conferences, like who are the more interesting people that you've met in person in any community?
Oh gosh. I don't really know, honestly. I've met so many randomly interesting people, but I don't think I don't think I've ever, ran into someone who's just like a famous person in the community and been like, I totally enjoyed my time. The best people that I've met is like, I met like a couple of Ripple employees who were like not even, high Ripple employees, or I even met a couple Stellar employees and all these, Polygon and all these other companies. And it's just like the people in the middle there, who know everything that's going on, but also are just like extremely brilliant people. That those are the people that I found the most interesting of everyone who I've met. I mean, and like I was at right Galaverse where we had like all these crazy artists and all these like amazing people that were there, but my best times were always just with random person who nobody knows on Twitter and nobody knows publicly, who works for these companies and is just like developing this super cool thing, and that's just their job.
Yeah. Have you ever met like Charles Hoskinson or Vitalik or anyone?
I've been adjacent to them, but I've never personally met them. So yeah, I don't think I've met anyone like traditionally famous in the space. I generally tend to avoid that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So being that you're a lawyer, man, like you'd have to be somewhat extroverted though, like,
Yeah.
or you mostly consider yourself introvert?
I'm a introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert. I don't know which one, but I'm really, really quiet at home and in general. But then when I'm out, I tend to have a lot of fun and I tend to talk to a lot of people. But when you have situations like those people who are like traditional celebrities in the space, they're hard to get to. And I like to just kind of, when I go to a place, I kind of find like a comfort corner and or a spot, and I mostly stay there, and I'll go around and talk to some people, but I've been lucky enough to in a sense have people like come up to me and know people, or sometimes I'll just like hang out with somebody and just kind of go with them around the party. But yeah, no, I'm not like a massive extrovert or introvert. I'm kind of in the middle.
Yeah. Well, we've got Jake in the chat. He goes, I love the vision Jesse has for Seedstarter. I think the slow organic approach and not rushing in with hype is exactly what this space needs.
Thank you. That's very kind. And I'm happy that people are appreciating that, because that's the goal, right? Like, I could sit here and be like, in 5 years, I'm going to have 10 million customers, but I don't even know if I want to handle that much that quickly, right? It doesn't make much sense. I really do love slow and steady, progress upwards.
Yeah. Well, you want to keep quality as well, like
Yeah.
if you start trying to bull rush everything and just get as big as possible, like the first thing you lose is your quality.
Yeah, yeah, the white glove service, right? When you're working with individuals and being able to talk to them and get to know them. Obviously you want to get to the point where you can't feasibly give people the white glove service, but still find a way to give them the white glove service. But then it doesn't, and it's not as much fun, right? It's fun for me to work with these founders and help them with, with all these questions and things like that. And I don't want to ever lose that. So if we explode too rapidly, too quickly, I won't be able to do that. I just won't be able to keep up.
Yeah. So do you reckon you would ever do a podcast again, man? Or you'd like even maybe a Seedstarter podcast to introduce, these different companies that want to be on the platform?
So I've been doing a couple spaces. It's not a regular thing, but I did it. I think I've done 3 or so spaces. I don't know. People tell me that I do a good job, but one of the biggest reasons I'm not on very many podcasts, or like don't come on many people's YouTube things, is like I just get nervous, and I don't really love doing it. So I think I'd rather have somebody else host and me just be kind of like jumping in and out, having to be on, like I don't know how you do it. I don't know how other people do it. Having to be on all the time is just really hard to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm really inconsistent, man, because I'm trying to run a business myself, and it's
Yeah.
like I've tried to do it weekly, and things come up, and it's like, well, do I just, like I'd like to get on and have a conversation, but there's no real end goal for me,
Yeah.
like I'm not trying to compete with anyone. I just want to talk to cool people. So
Yeah. You're just having a good time.
I have a list of cool people that you're a part of the list,
Thank
and
you.
then I reach out and try to annoy you to get you to come on. And about the only one so far, it was you and Faz that were the hard ones to schedule, but it's also hard with the time zones.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of a pain, so I'm sorry, but it's
That's all good.
just, yeah.
So
Yeah,
Punjab said the more you do it, the more comfortable you get.
it's true.
The worst
Uh,
part is, man, when you get like a bug for it and like, it's like going to the gym and then you miss like 2 weeks of the gym and you're like, ah, fuck it. There's no
yeah.
point.
Yeah, no, I can get that. But I just like, I don't know. I like to hide. I don't think I'm ever going to love public speaking, and it's not that I'm bad at it. Like I've done it so much, and whether it's in court or whatever else, and but I just like I don't like getting up there on stage, and I don't like having a camera looking at me, looking at myself. It's just like maybe I just got to cover my own face on the screen so I don't keep seeing myself. But yeah, I don't know.
So, like, when you're a lawyer, man, do you have like, is it like any other profession where you might come across a judge that just fucking hates you as a person and hates to deal with you, and you just know that you're going to get a bad verdict?
Yeah, I don't think the bad verdict is going to happen, but yeah, I think I've only personally found one judge who's like, I'm pretty certain really hated me. But yeah, that definitely happens. I had that happen more in mock trial back when I was in college, like playing around, like I was the kind of guy who the way that I would run trials was I was very aggressive actually. And so like 75% of judges would love it and 25% would be like, you are an asshole, sir. Um, but in real life, they judges tried it. Like even when they don't like you, I think they're pretty fair. Because they generally recognize that if they mess around too much, there's their career. It's entirely gone. And this is in a public setting where all of the, it's not like you're the only 2 people in the courtroom. There's lawyers, there's other people that are there. There are people that are just sitting there watching in the back. So they're generally pretty fair.
Yeah. We've got Zoro on the chat. He said, hello, fellas. Happy New Year 2024 and all support to you guys.
He's a
Well,
good dude.
all the support to Jesse, man, because I'm just doing a podcast when I feel like it.
Zoro's a good guy. I've actually never looked at his like his PFP up close, but it probably isn't what it is. But I always imagine him like skiing. It kind of looks like he's wearing like a hood and has like these big sea glasses on. So I don't actually know what it is, but I always picture him a guy who's just constantly skiing.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind his glasses, man, but I don't know
Yeah.
if I could pull them off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just reading what he said. He said Hynes coming soon, March 8th. We will have the TWC events for Web3 projects in Orlando. Hopefully, you can join us there.
I'll check it out. I don't know what TWC is, but I would love to learn more about it, and I love Orlando. So
as far as the states, man, like what? I'm not going to ask where you are, but like what states do you like in America? Because I know you got a lot of like. The more I talk to Americans, the more they're sort of, if they're from the South, they love the South. Like.
yeah.
So what parts do you like?
Yeah, well, I'm not from an area that anybody would ever say they like. I'm from New Jersey, so most people call it the armpit of America. But I actually really love New Jersey. There's not many states that you can be within an hour, to the beach and within an hour to the mountains, and it's not that long through the state. And there are some bad parts of Jersey, and that's the biggest problem is that you fly in to the worst parts of Jersey and you drive through the worst parts of Jersey, and that's like our main highway, our turnpike or our parkway. But everything else, it's actually quite beautiful. But where I really, the places where I've really loved the most in the country is I really do love the Northeast, like New Hampshire. Just like during the fall, oh, it's just so beautiful, the leaves changing colors and these big, beautiful trees. But I also really, have loved the South. I went to school in North Carolina, and I absolutely, fell in love. If I wasn't broke and had to make a decision about where I was going to take the bar and decided to go home just in case I never got a job, I would have stayed in North Carolina. I would have never left. But it's hard, because I've traveled a good amount in the US, and I really love like Oregon. It's beautiful. Washington is beautiful. There's just so many, many beautiful areas. But I'll stick Northeast because that's where I'm from.
Yeah. So you like to stay where you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And the beer's good here. So, that's always a good thing.
I really like watching like on YouTube. Occasionally, you'll come across like a Southern lawyer, and with the real thick accent and stuff, and like how angry they get when they're like trying to explain something. But it's
Yeah. Back when I still say y'all, that's a Southern thing. But back when I was like in law school or just a little bit after it, if I was like, if I just was having a little fun and I drank a little bit, I would slip into like the Southern drawl, and it was really funny to see because I don't have any kind of accent or, I don't think I have a traditional Jersey accent, but I also don't have a traditional anything accent. But the Southern accent, I'm nothing like, and it's really funny when I would like kind of slip into this Southern drawl.
so with the different accents, man. Like, what's the accent that's generally on every movie? Like, there's like an American accent, and I don't know where they're from, but it's like they all sound the same.
Sorry, I just saw someone telling me about how they could clean my carpet.
Yeah, clean your carpet. I was saying that. I wasn't going to read that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sorry, my carpet's so dirty.
So where does the general American accent come from?
I don't even know, honestly. There's so many different accents in the US, like I think that like everybody wherever you're from, you call that the general accent. Like I bet people from Boston think they have the American accent. People from the South think they have the American accent. And then there's, I think that I have the American accent because I don't think I have an accent. But, to you, I have an accent, right? So I don't really know what, I bet a billion different people would say what the traditional American accent is.
Well, I reckon it's like when you watch a movie though, man, it's like pretty much all the same sort of accent. And then you'll have someone, like you said, from Boston, and they're usually like an arsehole, like with their accent.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's distinct, like there's a distinct New York accent. There's a distinct New Jersey accent. There's a distinct like Alabama accent, and then there's that distinct like California, types of accent. So I don't know. Texas accent, it's all like different varies of each other. I don't know who's like the normal one. I really don't know.
I've asked a few people, man, and I think one person said California is like the generalized accent for movies and stuff. The Crypto Moose said, "Hey gentlemen, good to see you, Jesse. Midwest accents put a preposition at the end of each sentence. Where are my keys at?"
Yeah. Yeah, the Midwest accent is an interesting one too.
Punjab Sab, I'm Midwest. Jesse sounds like a normal American.
There you go. Middle of the road.
Middle of the road.
Yeah. It's
Look,
funny
man,
because people expect me to have this like weird Jersey accent, but and that's because like I don't know if you ever heard of Jersey Shore, the show, but those people aren't even from New Jersey, and it's funny that we get we get the alleged accent from a show of New Yorkers.
yeah. So, what do you think of like what's going on in the world, man? Like in America and like specifically, as far as like like I like to ask other questions, not just about
Yeah.
fucking crypto stuff. I want to get your perspective on it, but like I don't want to get too political. But what do you think about like the borders and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I'm not going to really touch on the borders issue because I don't, I feel like that is a nightmare to talk about, and it just causes so many fights. To be honest, I think that we're in a state, and I bet everyone's been saying this across like their own lifetimes, but the world feels like it's just going to shit entirely, and it doesn't feel like it's going in a good direction either way. And when you think about the U.S., like I don't think positively on either party. I don't feel positive about where the Republicans want to go, and I don't feel positive about where the Democrats want to go. And I was born, traditionally like a Catholic Republican, and then I've always been fiscally conservative, but I ultimately ended up voting Democrat the most recent election, and that was only because I didn't want to vote Republican, for the candidate who was Republican. It was just like, it's for me, I feel like everything is a lose-lose as where we're going, and I'm just, that's why I've been focusing on like more homesteading in terms of like getting acreage and starting to like plant an orchard and things like that, just because like I don't feel positive about the direction of the country, so I want to become as self-sufficient as possible.
Yeah, well, that's good, man. It's like nearly everyone that I know that has a brain's doing the same thing. So it's
Yeah.
funny, man. Like I'll start talking absolute bullshit about like accents and stuff, and it doesn't even flow properly. And then everyone in the chat starts talking, and then
Yeah.
when we're talking about crypto shit, it's like no one really talks.
Yeah, I'm supposed to say carburetor. I think that's what I'm supposed to say, carburetor. I don't know how else you would say that. I wonder how other people say that word.
My wife's in there trying to stir trouble, saying that I've got a bogan accent, but I'm not sure if he's. I think if Americans had bogans, it'd be like the hillbillies or whatever.
Yeah. And that's the thing is when you look at the comment there, I feel like in the US, if someone said that, that wouldn't go down well, the like how it's worded. I'm not going to say it out loud, but yeah, it's just like, things that are like normal in one area are not normalized in other areas. It's like, there's just no unison, globally. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, like with Seedstarter, man, like expanding into Europe and stuff, like wouldn't that be a hard market to be able to gauge since there's so many different laws, like with like every country of Europe? Like they're pretty much like you could put a big part of Europe just in Australia alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the good thing is that there is a law that's basically like if you are compliant with one of the countries, you're deemed compliant with all of them. So then you can operate across Europe, which is really great. So the real question is, and I think the answer is pretty easy. And based on the research I've done, the answer is pretty easy. Is do you think that regular people want to have opportunities to invest in companies before they go public? And I think the answer is yeah, right? Because traditionally what happens is, let's say like you take any company, it's like, let's look at Coinbase, when they went public, I wasn't an accredited investor or I didn't try to invest in them. And I got them at IPO and I lost money, right? It just tanked, whereas a bunch of people who were accredited and got in early made so much money. It's just the rich getting richer. So I think there's a market really everywhere for this kind of thing. And there's a market for businesses that don't want to just get controlled by VCs, especially in the crypto space. Crypto companies do not want to have VCs on their board and things like that. So based on the research I've done, I think there's a market everywhere, really, especially Europe.
Yeah. So like when you're in the testing the waters phase and you can sort of like allocate potentially what you're going to invest into a company. Say if I want to sit there and they say, look, it's going to be 150,000 to kick this project off. If I just go 150,000 and then I just hit enter, that then puts it into the threshold to be kicked off. But if I don't actually put that amount in, and then not many other people jump on board, what happens there?
Yeah, so the testing the waters is just an interest thing, you know. So when you get to the phase of actually going, you know, if you put that 150 and then nobody else puts interest, the company is going to decide whether they're going to go live or not. And they're going to look at it and be like, well, I had one investor of 150,000. Maybe I should reach out to them and see how, you know, what their commitment level is. Um, and then make a decision based on that whether they're going to go live. When they go live, they'll set their minimum, and you know, you'll either put it in or you won't. And if you don't, then they don't meet their threshold. But when you go live, you know, when you put that investment in and the investment closes, the money's there, right? They have the money. So you actually have to, you know, even to put in the commitment, you have to fund that investment. You don't just say, I'm going to invest 150,000. You actually have to move that $150,000 to the escrow bank. You can take it back if you decide before the round closes. But you know, they'll actually see that money and it'll close.
Cool. All right, man. Well, we've hit the hour mark anyway, and it's been really good having a chat with you, and I hope we can do it again soon. Sorry if there was some awkward parts in there, but it's
no, it's great. This was great. It was a really good conversation. So
all right, cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't mind hanging around for just a minute or two to make sure it's all uploaded properly, that'd be good.
Sounds good.
Thanks for everyone for dropping in.
Thank you.